Good morning. We will start the webinar in 1 minute. Thank you. So good morning and welcome from AWS. Thank you for taking time to join the webinar Enhance the Availability and Performance of SAP HANA. My name is Adam Hill. I'm a SAP Specialist Solution Architect at AWS covering the EMEA region. Today I'm joined by Stephen from SUSE and Ben from Lemongrass. We will leave time at the end of the webinar for questions, so please use the Q&A window to send us your questions during the webinar. We've also updated the case study as a handout for those of you who wish to download this, and you will also be sent a link later on to download a recorded version of the webinar. So before handing over to Stephen, I'll spend a few minutes just talking about why you can drive SAP transformation by running on AWS. So firstly, why AWS for SAP? Well, AWS has the most complete cloud for business innovation. Our breadth and depth of services help remove barriers such as risk, cost, and complexity of integrating new technologies of SAP workloads. AWS also helps you provision infrastructure faster and with less risk than using on-premise hardware, enabling new business models that were not previously feasible. AWS offers extensive unparalleled sets of integrated services, including offerings such as compute, storage, databases, analytics, network, mobile, developer tools, and management tools to help you extend your SAP workloads to use those services. Cost effectivity. Running SAP workloads on AWS enables you to reduce the overall total cost of ownership. With AWS, you have access to low-cost infrastructure that you can provision rapidly and deprovision on demand, helping to minimize the overheads associated with hardware maintenance. The AWS pay-as-you-go pricing model gives you the ability to pay for the cost you need when you need it and switch it off when you don't need it. By running your SAP software on a hybrid network architecture of AWS, you can continue to derive value from your on-premise resources while responding to new business initiatives and projects with speed and agility on the AWS platform. Then if we move on to looking at security and compliance. Running AWS SAP applications on AWS helps you enable to meet those strict regulatory requirements and strengthen your security posture of your SAP workload. AWS is designed to help customers comply with a wide variety of regulatory and industry-specific security requirements, including HIPAA, PCI, ISO, and SOC, and many more. AWS offers dozens of assurance programs designed to help customers meet these regulatory requirements. And finally, let's move on to certified and supported. SAP have certified AWS for production deployment of SAP applications, platforms, and databases. Many enterprises have migrated their SAP production workloads to AWS and are seeing improved business efficiency and lower cost of ownership as a result. Sorry, slide jumped too quickly there for me. Let's move on to SAP on AWS enterprise customers. We have thousands of customers running on AWS and hundreds of those customers running in production. Customers such as BP, Kellogg's, Compass Group have all moved their SAP production workloads to run on AWS and seen the benefits that brings. Now let's move on to the SAP and AWS Alliance. We've actually been working with SAP as a customer since 2008, and SAP have trusted AWS to host its own workloads, leveraging the AWS capabilities for scalability, agility, and cost effectiveness for a variety of use cases and scenarios. That includes most recently deployment of a number of their SaaS and PaaS offerings, such as SAP Cloud Platform and HANA Enterprise Cloud Platform, as well as Concur Hybris. We started work in 2016 with SAP around deploying a virtualized HANA appliance for our customers. in May, we announced the X1 platform. We started out with the 1 and then 2 terabyte instance sizes. And in 2017, we announced the 4 terabyte instance size for scale up. We also certified with SAP scale out, initially to 14 terabytes, so 7 times 2, and then 34 terabytes. And then finally, in 2018, we certified scale out up to 50 terabytes. At Sapphire 2018, we also announced a number of new initiatives with SAP. So firstly, the launch of our EC2 bare metal platform for 6, 9 and 12 terabyte scale up instances, as well as next innovations of our EC2 platform for running SAP, the C5 and M5, which I'll talk about in a bit. Let's move on to the AWS global footprint. Currently, we have 18 regions across the globe as of August this year, with 4 more regions planned later this year and into 2019. Across those regions are 55 availability zones, with 12 more availability zones planned for later this year and into 2019. This enables customers to choose the geographical region that most suits their business to deploy their SAP workloads. We also offer a number of resources to help our customers and partners move their SAP workloads to AWS. This includes white papers, blog posts, FAQs, and infrastructure pricing estimates. We also have a number of what we call quick starts, which are reference architectures and infrastructure as code to help deploy your SAP workloads on AWS, specifically SAP HANA and SAP NetWeaver on HANA. And you'll also hear later on Stephen talk about one of the latest quick starts we've launched, specifically focused on SUSE HAE. We also worked in 2017 with SAP on what we call the Rapid Migration Test program. This takes the SAP DMO tool, the Database Migration Option tool, as part of SUM, and enhances that tool to not only support the migration of an AnyDB workload to SAP HANA, or actually ASE, but also to support the move to the cloud. And that's all available in a single maintenance event. So with one step, you can move not only to HANA, but also to the cloud. This enables you to reduce the effort involved in migrating to HANA and the overall elapsed time. We also have the AWS Partner Network, and the tens of thousands of partners on the network, but a number of those partners actually hold the SAP competency and focus specifically on helping customers move their SAP workloads to the cloud. That includes providing services such as consulting services around migrations and implementations, software solutions, and we're talking about that today with SUSE around HANA availability, also systems migrations, backup and recovery and data replication, and managed services such as SAP hosting, disaster recovery, and you'll hear from one of our partners today, Lemongrass, who will talk a bit about that. Let's move on to our compute platform, what we call EC2. We have a number of instances certified for running SAP across all the generations. It's actually 42 as we stand today. And this year we launched 3 new sets of instances specifically focused on supporting our SAP customers. So the M5, the C5, and the EC2 bare metal. If we look at the latest generation of those EC2 instances, what we call the C5 and M5, they're built around the Intel Skylake processor. They offer larger memory sizes in terms of CPU and memory, and they're powered by our Nitro platform, which has enabled us to improve the efficiency of the number of SAPs per CPU we're able to offer our customers. So you'll see the M5 now offers 19% more SAPs per CPU over the M4, and the C5 offers 26% more SAPs per CPU over the C4. And they actually do this at a lower price per hour than the actual M4 and C4. So these are all certified SAP instances available from AWS. Let's move on to HANA. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we currently support up to 4 terabytes scale up and 50 terabytes scale out. These are all available as on demand and pay as you use. You have the flexibility to scale out as you need and the flexibility to scale up as you need, offering the lowest TCO for running SAP HANA. And then if we move on to what we announced at Sapphire, so we have the virtualized instances supporting up to 4 terabytes scale up, 50 terabytes scale out. And at Sapphire this year, we announced we will launch 6, 9, and 12 terabyte scale up instances using our EC2 bare metal platform built around a Nitro platform. These are all EC2 instances hosted in the same AWS regions and availability zones as the virtualized instances. They can be deployed into the same virtual private cloud networking. They use the same API or console. They have direct access to the underlying bare metal instances, and they use the same common storage, what we call EBS, and all the broader services such as S3. So this gives the customer the most complete cloud native approach to deploying very large HANA instances. So on that note, I'll now hand over to Stephen.
Thanks very much, Adam. My name is Stephen Mogg. I'm the EMEA Technical Strategist for SAP and Public Cloud at SUSE. And I'm going to take you through a little bit about SUSE, the relationship with SAP, and the product we have that supports all of this SAP workloads in the cloud. So I want to start by talking about the relationship that we have with SAP. It extends back to 1999, which is quite an amazing amount of time. And in that time, we've had a number of firsts which we've delivered alongside SAP. So we at SUSE were the first Linux on which you could deploy an SAP workload. We were the first Linux on which you could deploy a virtualized SAP workload a few years later. And in 2010, when SAP HANA launched, we were the only OS that was available to support that brand new platform. But it's not just operating systems that we work with in terms of SAP. We collaborate on a number of other technologies which SUSE deliver, which support a lot of the SAP service offerings which they have. And in terms of the customer, we have a fully joined up support experience. So we have SUSE engineers working at SAP and some of the SAP team working very closely with SUSE to ensure that you get the best customer experience. So where are we after 18 years? So with SAP HANA, there are a number of platform vendors which will release benchmarks to give customers an idea of what they can expect with certain technology, and SAP HANA sat on top of it. And nearly every benchmark so far has been delivered on top of a SUSE platform. And that's simply because SUSE has become one of the de facto standards on which to deliver SAP workloads. Talking about AWS specifically, we now have SLES for SAP available in both a pay-as-you-go model where you choose to pay by the hour, or as a bring your own subscription where you can buy a subscription up front and just pay for your infrastructure costs in the public cloud. And that's been available for the best part of 3 years in AWS. In terms of market share, for those customers deploying SAP HANA, over 90% of those have elected to do that on top of a SUSE platform. And for those deploying classic workloads and that choose to deploy on top of Linux, over 70% of those also deploy on top of SUSE. And in the Business One space, where we see that deployed on top of SAP HANA, again, we currently have 100% of that market share. So I guess before I can say why people choose SLES for SAP, I kind of need to tell you a little bit about what it is. So as I've said already, it was the first operating system which supported SAP HANA workloads, and it's been around for 8 years or more. One of the technologies that we bundle in with SLES for SAP is our business continuity suite. Now, for those that have played around with HANA before will know that it comes with system replication out of the box, which provides you with some element of high availability and disaster recovery. But in order to initiate that failover, it's potentially a manual process. So what we do is add a layer of intelligence and automation around system replication, which allows you to automatically detect and fail over in the event of a particular outage on a primary HANA node and get those services back up running incredibly quickly. Finally, some of the other things that we appreciate at SUSE are that we know an investment in SAP is normally a significant investment, not in terms of just software, but in terms of time and effort to deploy and infrastructure as well. And it's important you get the most out of that. So we have, again, some tooling in place which ensures you get the maximum performance out of that investment as long as it runs on the SUSE platform. So I'll pop this slide in very quickly just as a reference, but as you can, just wanted to point out that SLES for SAP at its core is SUSE Linux Enterprise Server, which is our robust general purpose OS, but we've also bundled in a large amount of software and services around that, which we target specifically at those customers running SAP workloads. I don't have time to go through it all today, but if you do have any questions around this, you can either pop them in the Q&A box and we'll tackle those at the end, or feel free to get in touch via AWS if you need to. So this is a great example of SUSE, AWS, and SAP working together to deliver benefit to the customer. So SUSE has had a validated, SAP validated HA solution for 5 or 6 years. But some of the technology that we've traditionally had does not necessarily extend well into the public cloud. So we've had to work together alongside AWS and SAP in order to deliver some new technology into AWS to ensure you get the same business continuity experience that you did potentially on premise. So as you can see here, we've got a couple of software agents that we've put in. One is a fencing agent, the other is an IP agent. In order to perform a failover between 2 nodes, if your first instance fails, the first thing you need to do during that takeover is fence the original primary to ensure that it never comes up again. And the software that's been included here uses the Amazon EC2 API in order to achieve that. And to ensure your clients remain connected to the primary node or the primary instance of HANA, we can also have an IP agent which moves an IP address between those particular nodes. So there are a number of system replication scenarios which you can install, and SUSE can support quite a few of those. So there's obviously the performance optimized one, where you have a second instance, usually in a different availability zone, waiting for the first primary node to fail, and that will give you the best recovery time possible, because you can fail over in that scenario, you can fail over within minutes. If you want to make better use out of that secondary node, it is possible to look at the cost optimized scenario, where you have perhaps a QA workload or something else running on that secondary HANA box. In the event of a failover, the first thing we need to do is to shut down whatever's on there before we can promote that secondary box up to be a primary. So the actual recovery time is a little slower, but you do get better value out of that secondary node. And the third one that we see a lot of customers do is what they call chain. And that's where you have a pair of HA nodes providing high availability, perhaps within a single region, and then an asynchronous connection out to an instance in a completely different AWS region. And that provides some extended DR capability. So one of the things that SUSE tried to do is make life as easy as possible for our customers. So we were really excited to see this come out of AWS. And as Adam's already mentioned, it's one of their AWS Quick Starts, but what it essentially allows you to do is build a production-ready HANA cluster within an hour. All right, so an exercise which potentially would have taken you days to deploy the network, the instances, install the HANA software, and then configure the cluster can be done, as it says here, in a matter of minutes. And this is all based on SUSE and SAP best practices. So it is production ready from the word go. So whilst this naturally leans itself towards proof of concepts, we are seeing a lot of customers use this for production deployments as well. So in summary, SUSE offers a lot of technology and a lot of features and benefits which actually translate into business value. Whether that's increased availability of systems thanks to the business continuity suite we've put in, or perhaps just saved time in terms of deployment, this will hopefully translate into kind of a dollar value for you. But it's not just about technology to create a successful SAP project. What you tend to need is a good technology partner alongside you. So with that in mind, I'll hand you over to Ben.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are, and thanks for taking the time to join us this morning. So my name is Ben Lingwood. I'm the CTO of Lemongrass. I'd like to take you through a little bit about who we are, if you've not heard of us before, and then we'll get off some slides and actually show you some screen cams of actually some of the automated systems that we have, and show you some of the things that we've been talking about this morning. So Lemongrass have been around for 10 years, and actually we do one thing, but we do one thing well, and that is we specialize on SAP deployment exclusively in Amazon Web Services. And the reason why we're a little bit different is, despite most of us being in the ecosystem for far too many years to mention, we are an automate first organization. So we don't like repetitive tasks. We don't like going through and performing typical basis activities or administration activities. We leverage the full breadth and depth of Amazon wherever possible and drive automation throughout the SAP ecosystem. So just to put some light on that, we've moved today over 1,600 systems. And in fact, Lemongrass were the first organization ever to do a migration and a production go live into Amazon Web Services 4 years ago. And we do that with just 150 people, again, because with our automate first policy, we can actually support, drive, and operate systems with relatively few people when systems are auto-healing, self-extending, and to a large extent, self-administrating as well. If we come on to where we're located, we're very much a born in the cloud organization. We are omnipresent from a global perspective. We have delivery and operation centers globally. So our run organizations run from Patagonia, South Africa, and then down into Kuala Lumpur. So cover a range of run. And we have product teams from the US, through EMEA and through India as well, developing our platform operations. So truly a global organization, and as you'd expect, we are running global large organizations. That includes government, that includes regulated pharmaceutical, manufacturing, just to name a few. If we look at why organizations move, what's the key driven reason for customers to move to an Amazon-based organization? A few examples on the screen here. So if we look at Cambridge University Press in the middle there, this well-known publishing house had a burning platform where they needed to exit their existing data center within just 2.5 short months. They had over 200 systems. That scale of system and that scale of environment simply isn't possible to do by hand in that sort of timescale. So for that reason, we automate wherever possible, and this environment migration was driven exclusively by an automated procedure. Seeker on the right-hand side, again, this is an organization, one of the early ones that we drove that migrated into Amazon. They actually switched the head of operations from London to Singapore. And as such, we're able to do a full data center migration in just a maintenance window over a weekend. We look at Britvic. Britvic are an organization that have truly adopted DevOps and automation. And this is an organization now that has massively slashed the size of their SAP environment, because in an Amazon world, you don't need to maintain huge amounts of non-productive systems. You can create them on demand, and I'll show that a little bit later on. And one important thing to think about, if we look at Heineken here, is the other offerings that you can then extend into if you're looking at an Amazon automated driven world. So in the Heineken story, we're using data lake technology to use SAP data, overlay that with non-SAP data, and run real-time data mining and data analytics across the full IT enterprise. So if we look at where we see the push and the pull factors for automation, so 4 key areas that we see predominantly. If you look in the prepare area, so by prepare, we look at things like what is running in the current estate. And I'm sure you've got the same challenges in your own organization sometimes, looking at what versions of the software are running, whether that's operating system, whether that's SAP, looking at the interfaces between those solutions. Where are these interfaces connecting to and from? Are they internal? Are they external? What format are they running in? We have automation tools that look around the entire discovery of the landscape, whether that's building automatic interface registers, whether that's doing sniffers and discoveries through the network to understand what SAP systems are talking to, and then looking at the technical preparation required with that data to do technical cutovers. That brings us nicely on to migrate, and even this is an area that can be automated. If we look at the way databases typically run, if you look at a typical SAP solution, normally you'd expect 60 to maybe 80% of the database to be static. Maybe only 20-30% is dynamic and accessed on a regular basis. So again, we have automation technology that allows the migration of the static data in advance of actually the cutover weekend. So this actually means we can start the migration in the background while the system's still being used productively, while there's still live users on the system. And that means actually at the cutover weekend, actually only a fraction of that data needs to be moved over, and therefore the cutover can be carried over very quickly. So on the previous slide, you saw the Compass Group as an example, where we moved 250,000 payroll users in just 4 short hours because of this sort of technology. Operate is a key area, and I think where the real meat is on the bone here when you look at the world of ops, so that's business operations, security operations, system operations, and so forth. This is really an area that we see you can drive very large cost saving and optimization and agility into an SAP landscape. So for example, things like system operations, things like patching and maintenance, or DevOps on the right-hand side there, things like creating systems on demand, or for things like proof of concept or sandboxes, or playing around for project environments. So what we're trying to do here is by driving automation into keeping the lights on, so you don't have to worry about running and operating and patching. It really allows organizations to focus on new things such as new versions of SAP, new innovations coming out, and allow the enterprise to transform into new technology areas. So let's dive a little bit deeper into a couple of these areas. So let's dive down onto DevOps, very hot topic at the moment, development operations. So by that, we mean things like system hygiene. How often do you patch your system? If you're looking at operating system patching or even SAP patching, that typically requires extensive downtime, extensive planning. That can be a challenge for a lot of organizations. Downtime in SAP nearly always equals quite a large dollar value when you're taking down the system that is running your core finance system. Equally, when you're looking at agility, looking at landscape management, if you need to copy your production system, maybe you need to refresh your development system, or maybe you need to build a new environment for projects. Typically, these have very high lead times associated. Typically, if you look at a stand-up of a new box, you're looking 4 to 6 weeks just to rack, stack, build, and get the system ready for the project team to start working. That can constitute quite a significant cost and overhead effort when you're looking at that across the enterprise. So on the screen here, you see one of our automation projects, MiCloud, with what we've done with a couple of our customers. So in this environment, you can see Dev, QS, and Prod. Typically, these are always on system. You don't tend to turn these off. They're left on for production release. But a normal SAP landscape is typically a triangle shape. So the non-SAP, or sorry, the non-productive systems, I should say, normally outnumber the production release landscapes quite significantly. So things like sandboxes and training environments, project release tracks, testing release tracks can constitute the majority of the landscape. Now, in an SAP automated world, what you can do is look to release and develop and create these systems on demand only when you need them. So what our technology does here, using AWS automation and SUSE'S, the operating system here, is we can take an instant copy of the production system, clone that out into an isolated network, and that can be with a different host name, with a different SID, even on a different version of, for example, HANA. It will even change the version, build that system in an isolated network, so it's away from the production system, the interfaces are dead and off, you've got security and access policies around it, you've got user accessibility pre-built around that system in advance. Very important when you're looking at things like data control and GDPR and accessibility, and then allows that system to be stood up, ready for that project team to be up and running. And we've got that down to between 20 minutes to under an hour to create those systems. So a couple of the examples that I showed earlier, customers have actually taken out nearly 50% of their SAP landscape and now create these systems on demand. Remember, a system now is just a line of code, can be stood up, used for the task that is needed, scheduled to be turned off when you don't use it, and then destroyed at the end when that activity is completed, and it can be flowed back into the release track. So quite a different way of thinking from traditional, and quite a powerful way to leverage the benefits of cloud to drive that. So let me go ahead and actually show you some of this on a screen instance here. So I'm just here logging into our miCloud platform. What I'm going to do here is we're going to create a new HANA cluster. Remember, as we said before, a cluster is a new environment over 2 availability zones, 2 data centers. So here immediately you can see a list of all of the HANA images that are certified right now for SAP. I'm going to select a terabyte on the count here, and you can see the list here automatically sorted of all the supported systems of that size, and again with pre-built architecture underneath. I can limit the number of hosts, so if I'm going scale up rather than scale out, and again, that's automatically sorted. Diving in, you can see I've selected an X116 here. We can see information about the system. the CPU, the network throughput, the type of disk being used, etc. So we can come back into that. So let me just change that back down to a smaller size, so back to 30 gigabytes here. Just as an example. And then we've got 3 different options we can look about how I'm using the system. Am I using that for something like training or for development operations, something I could use spot instances for, DevOps scenarios? Fine. Am I using it for development and test, in which case the system is automatically listing systems that are SAP validated for dev and test environments. You can see on the right-hand side, the production storage is certified. That's important. You need the IOPS to perform HANA runs, or production grade only, in which case it has to be fully SAP supported and validated, and that's supported and listed now by only the SAP certified production images. All the architecture taken care of, all the disk architecture and models taken care of as well. The costs on there are real time, by the way. That's actually putting it down from the region. So I can select whether that's 1 site, 2 sites, or 3 sites, and you can see the changes in SLA there. So you can see there I've got 2 hosts there, and I can see the cost there for running 2 systems in an on-demand cluster. We'll change that to 3, you can see 3 times. So that's spreading it out across the 3 availability zones, 3 independent data centers. As you can see here, I'm in the Oregon region, just for the purposes of demo here. So I've gone ahead and selected that on an R4. Summary of what I've selected above. So we've gone for 2 R4 instances. We're building a HANA cluster across 2 locations. You can see that's on demand and the type of disk I'm using, GP2 in this case. All good. I can see the pricing options. At this level, you can't see a lot of difference, but a little bit of an illustration about how to buy things from Amazon. So whether I'm buying them on demand, and you can see here, spot is 0.4 cents for this cluster. On demand is 0.9. Or upfront 3 is upfront is 0.351. So we're talking fractions of cents at this level, but you can see the difference in pricing strategy, and that's something we can help with. If I come down now, I can choose the host name of the system. So this is what it's going to be called. I can choose the version of HANA. We have every version of HANA ever created, including patching, available on this system. So I'll go for the latest one at 2.30 and select the latest patch. We'll go for 2.3.1 here. The next thing I'll do is choose the SID for the system. So we'll just call this demo, and the backup schedule. And again, another screen here, you can actually go through and build the backup schedule that you want, retention period, and whether that's full or incremental. The environment, again, this is a demo box, but this would be typically something like your sandbox, your dev, your production, whatever you want. And the region. So you can see here we've got 3 availability zones within the Oregon region there. So we'll just select A, and then I'll just put in a password here. This password can be built on a password policy as well. I'm happy with that. Hit deploy. This will cost me the princely sum of 9 cents an hour to run this cluster. Press go, all good. And that is now building that system live based on that criteria that we've done. Through the magic of editing, we've just fast forwarded 22 minutes, and we can see that has now completed. That's a HANA production cluster built in 2 data centers in 22 minutes. So if I go into the systems here, I can see the A and the B node are up and running, the 2 zones. I can see that my replication is already up and running. You can see the name server and the index server running. So I can see that that's running on a recovery time of 0. And I've got options now. I can scale the system out. I can scale the system up. So maybe I wanted to move this up to the next size, and I can also patch the system. So let me describe that. So if I wanted to maybe down patch this to an earlier version of HANA, maybe I had a problem. So let's go down to 2.3.4. I can also patch the SUSE version to the latest version as well. And I can do a data center move as well to a different availability zones. Think about what that's just done. It's changed the HANA version, it's patched the operating system, and it's done a data center migration. And it will do that in about 20 minutes. Really a real change in the way things are run. So let's zoom down now and look at one of the specific hosts. I'm looking at node A here, just to show you another side here. And again, here you can see real-time monitoring. I can see the health of HANA, bit of a wobble as it was built, and now it's stabilized out. I can look down at utilization here, the memory processing. You can see then the spiky graphs as it was building, and now it's settling down. I can look at the audit log. So this shows me everything that's happened on that system since I triggered it. So from the installation at the bottom, coming all the way up here, I can see everything that's happened on the system. You can see there it finished in just 11 minutes. So that's a HANA production system built in 11 minutes. And then the remaining time, so about another 11 minutes there, up until the actual cluster was active. Yep. So no basic skills required. Additionally, I can do things like backup. I can do restarts on HANA. I could do point-in-time recovery. So if I had an issue, wanted to go back to an earlier date or time, I can select exactly what I wanted to zoom back to and rebuild the system to that image. This is great for things like cutover rehearsals or updates where you want to run backwards and forwards over that time scale multiple times in a day. I can schedule start and stop times. So if I wanted to turn this off overnight or at weekends, I can define a schedule here. Again, there's another screen you can point and click and build your own schedule for up and down. That performs a graceful start and stop, by the way. I can change this to a scale-out architecture. Maybe this is BW. And again, here, different options to do things like operating system patching as well. And at the end, for good housekeeping, of course, I can stop and terminate this system and launch equivalent systems if I want to build something similar. So there's a lot going on there, but I hope it shows you a little bit about what we can do. So let's look at one other area on the DevOps theme here. Let's look at backups. So if I went ahead and selected a backup image here, say, for example, this was a production backup from last night that's completed. So what I can do now is go ahead and build a new system from that backup. And again, because we're talking on an agility model here, I can actually change the system name. I don't have to restore the existing system and then make changes from there. I can use this as a tool. So I can give it a new host name. I can even get a new SID. I can even change the version of HANA, right? Because we're always failing forward in an Amazon world whenever restoring with previous version and making changes. I can change the backup schedule. I can change the network. So if this is a production backup, I probably want to restore it into a sandbox environment. And maybe even I want to do this restore into a different data zone, a different availability zone. It's likely if this was a production backup, it would have been a cluster. But probably, for a sandbox type of system, I probably want to take that down to one site and maybe a slightly smaller box is possible as well. So I can go ahead and select a more cost-optimized solution for this, and confirms the cost there at 8 cents an hour to be able to go and do that. And again, about 20 minutes, that will be completed, and you can then go ahead and log in. So pretty fast pace there, but I hope gives you a good overview of some of the features that are available when you're running high levels of automation within an AWS environment. Just scratching the surface there. And as you can see, really nice, really easy point to click automation. I can teach your grandmother to do it, and no deep technical skills required to drive it in this sort of model. Okay, if we click on to the next slide. This is another view. So this is what we call FinOps, finance operations. A lot of people get very excited sometimes with this new technology and create loads and loads of systems. Easy to get carried away. We do have the capability to put a mandatory idle stop. So if it's a training system and someone doesn't log on for an hour, it will shut it down. So there's some features there. But this is a few screenshots of a mobile application. Now, based on your tagging strategy, if you're not familiar with that, everything in Amazon is based on tagging. So for example, if I was building some sandbox systems, I would tag that a sandbox. I would tag that as it's running ECC finance, maybe. I tag it in that it's Ben doing some sandbox work and give the reason for that. And that means at the roll-up level here, you can look at each individual system or user or group of systems or projects and see exactly what they are spending money on. That's updated every hour. Set a budget line based on what we expect to spend in the month against that, based on systems that we know will be up all the time, or systems that we know maybe will turn off overnight or weekends, or we use a few hours a day. So what we like to see, as you saw on that last little iPhone screen on the right-hand side, there is the cost per day. We like to see a bit of a heartbeat, bit of a wobbly line there. That shows that the organization that is actually using this as a cloud, not leaving things on, but turning things on and off and up and down on demand when it's specifically needed for the business. So again, drives that agility. Can put this in the hands of project managers or into finance operators, and they can see real time exactly what the organization is spending. So it's a good overview from that perspective. So we've put this into a lot of customers, over 40 companies, over 13 countries now. And you can see there's a broad range of organizations from FMCG to pharmaceutical to local government to energy and utility companies. A range of organizations there, typically driving in both for the operational side that I've just shown you, so whether that's creating systems, managing systems, operating systems, the benefit of automation for things like cutover, whether you're doing an upgrade, a migration in, and or changing the database. As you know, SAP have got a 2025 deadline to move on to SAP-supported database platforms. This can often be a trigger to migrate onto a cloud environment along with a database conversion, and actually the difference in maintenance charge in some cases has actually paid for the migration project in itself, just as some examples. So I hope that's been a good overview about some of the things that we bring together, some of the benefits of bringing automation with Amazon and leveraging SUSE there. With that, I'll hand back to Adam.
Thank you very much, Ben, and thank you, Stephen. So we've got a few questions in. Let me start with the first one. Is it possible to choose IBM Power as a server architecture from AWS for SAP services? So the simple answer to that is no. The EC2 platform that underpins the compute in AWS is based on x86, primarily Intel technology. However, we do have a number of customers that have moved their SAP workloads from Power to x86, and we have partners like Lemongrass who have a lot of experience in doing those migrations. The next question we have, which I'll also let you jump in on, Ben, is this available in all the EU regions, e.g. Dublin, London and Frankfurt? So firstly, let me answer that from a EC2 point of view. In both the Dublin and the Frankfurt regions, we offer the full size of instances, so the 1, 2 and 4 terabyte X1 platform for running HANA in Dublin and Frankfurt. In London, we currently offer the 1 and 2 terabyte instances. I'll then just let Ben chip in around the actual platform that he just described from a Lemongrass point of view.
Yeah, so the automation platform I just showed is running and live with customers in Dublin and Frankfurt, and actually to enable into a new region, I can do in about 3 days. So very easy to activate into any other region. Currently, we're active in 6 of the regions.
Thank you. Okay. Any companies done migrations of SAP HANA in India, any government customers? So that one will follow up specifically. All of our public references for SAP migrations are on our website. So that question specifically, I'll follow up with you directly and send some examples of customer case studies for SAP migrations in India. Okay, so moving on, one for yourself, Stephen. I noticed on your website that SLES for SAP 15 is now available. Can I use that version for SAP HANA in AWS?
Okay, that's a good question. So SLES 15 is relatively new. It is currently coming towards the end of its validation process with SAP, so I expect that to be fully available in AWS and validated to run HANA on in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you. And next question for you, Stephen, is I've deployed standard SLES, not SLES for SAP, for some trial SAP workloads. I want to convert these for SLES for SAP. Is that possible?
Yeah, that's another good question. Actually, it's one we get quite a lot. The answer is no. So it's a choice you need to make up front and get right from the start, because it's kind of like a one-way door. So whilst you could use some of the Lemongrass automation tooling, I'm sure, to migrate between various different versions, if you just have a single SLES instance, the only way to migrate that to SLES for SAP in AWS is to do a rebuild.
Thank you. So one for you, Ben. Do I need any technical or SAP basis skills to leverage the automation build tools you demoed?
Good question. So sort of short answer to that is no. So the screens that I just showed, you need to have obviously the business understanding of what size to create the systems, what environments to put them in, and where you want them. So you need to be technically aware where to deploy them. But from a hands-on experience, no, you don't. We do have other screens in that where you can put workflows around that. So for example, if you wanted to create a system but wanted to 3-stage sign-off, whether that's a guy requesting it, someone signing it off and adding maybe a PO, and then someone executing, we've got workflow packages that can build into that. But short answer is no, it's all friendly UI driven.
Great, thank you. One more for you, Stephen. One of the components on your diagram was the OS tuning and security. Could you just explain a bit more about that, please?
Yeah, very, very quickly. In terms of the OS tuning, so we have one image available in AWS, which is our SLES for SAP image. That has to accommodate everything from NetWeaver to central services clusters and HANA as well. So there's a number of tuning components we put in, one of which is something called SAP Tune, and that comes with a number of profiles where you can decide what this AWS instance is going to be. So you deploy the workload, and if you are doing things by hand, you can use SAP Tune, which will tune your system based on relative SAP notes and best practices. So.
Thank you. One for you, Ben. In the billing mobile application, I can see the prices per project or per system. How can these be broken down for reporting?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, it's based on your tagging strategy, and we've got templates if you need some help or advice with that. So majority of organizations tend to break that down by project, whether that's a production system or a series of projects running underneath, but it's completely customizable to be able to map it down to your enterprise structure or to the way that you do system billing. So most of the time it's built around how the organization wants to build down or tag the finance structure across the organization. So really a universal tool to fit any shape.
Thank you. Another one for you, Ben. Are these automated bills from a Amazon machine image or from the real SAP installation media?
Oh, good question. So if you think about it, if you're doing an AMI, an Amazon machine image, it would mean every time that we did, like I showed you on the screen there, we would have to rehydrate that image. And what you tend to find in SAP or even at the operating system, if there are recommended updates, then we'd have to apply either lots of patches to that or continually then have to update that image. So it turns into a librarian problem of keeping those images up to date. So actually what the system's doing is it's doing an install based on the latest installation media. So every time that we build that, it's onto the latest and greatest version. So it's a much more efficient way to do that. This also means that when there's a new version of SAP coming out, so for example, there's 1809 from SAP coming out shortly for S4, it means we can simply roll in those new binaries and the tool just carries on installing on the latest version. So it's a cleaner way of doing it.
Great, thank you. And another question, can the automated tools be used with the new EC2 bare metal instances presented today?
Good question. So actually, yes. So the new Nitro hypervisor, so when Adam showed the slide showing those new larger systems, actually we've already done the development work, and yes, the tool can control and manage those larger sizes now.
Great. Another question related to power. Can we have the power servers in our local data center and disaster recovery servers on AWS? Could we have anything to change anything? So specifically on that one, typically the answer would be no, because that would be considered heterogeneous. However, specifically for HANA on Power, if you're running HANA 2 on Power, it is possible to restore a HANA 2 database onto x86. So very much the devil's in the detail on that specific question around if that's specifically related to HANA or any DB. Please feel free to reach out to me directly on that question if you have any further questions. Another question, when you deploy a backup into a new sandbox, and as you showed it, I can change the HANA database version, does that mean if I want to upgrade on the database, I can take a backup and restore it into a new version? I think that's one for you, Ben.
Yeah, absolutely. So remember, as I said, it's always failing forward. Hardware is disposable. You're moving forward, never patching the existing versions. Actually, behind the scenes, what the technology is doing is actually building a brand new system based on your selected criteria. So, for example, it would install and build a new system on maybe the new version of HANA. Let's say it's going from version 2 to version 2.3. What it's doing is building that and then using HANA system replication to play the data into that new version and using the HANA installer itself to actually build that data using the installation agent. So yes, it's possible to step between versions because of that.
Okay, and a follow-up to that was there will be no loss of data as a follow-up question onto that one, Ben.
No, again, because it's using HSR, in this case, HANA system replication, it's replaying in real time, and only when that system is up and running and is synchronous with the existing system is effectively, it would then move the forward connection, so the user connection would flick from one to the other. So the downtime required is as quick as moving an IP record and then the IP replication around the network to do that, but no, there'd be no loss of data.
Excellent. And the last question then is it available, can I leverage all these automation tools with new AWS platform releases?
Yes, so as we mentioned with the Nitro platform, everything you've seen on the screen there is built actually running in Amazon itself and using Amazon native APIs. So we're using the programming sets between SAP and AWS to achieve a lot of this. So what it means is when new features and functionality come out, it's very easy for us to roll that in. So an example would be things like, the C5 family Adam spoke about earlier on the slides. So when that was released and you saw the mechanism there, very easy for us to then just roll systems into that new solution and customers be able to get that extra horsepower and cost saving immediately.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ben. So that is it for questions. So I'd just like to finally thank everybody for their attendance. I hope you found it informative. As mentioned at the start of the webinar, we will share a recording of this webinar via email later on. So thank you very much.